Welcome back to another fantastic video. Today we're going to be looking at historical changes in the power of the presidency. We're going to start off today talking about changes to the actual Constitution, so specific changes, written changes to the Constitution itself. And the first one we want to look at is the 12th Amendment. So the 12th Amendment was passed in the 1800s, and it's the first amendment to deal specifically with how presidents are elected, okay? So prior to the 12th Amendment, presidents and vice presidents were elected individually. Okay. So if you were a candidate for president, you would run, and whoever got the most electoral or the majority of electoral votes would become president, and whoever came in second would become vice president. So with the election between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, that kind of spurred the need for change, shall we say. So the 12th Amendment says that presidents and vice presidents are going to be voted on different electoral ballots. So the Electoral College is going to cast one ballot for president and one ballot for vice president. And we'll talk more about that in class. Next, we have the 22nd Amendment, and we've mentioned this many times before, but the 22nd Amendment says that presidents can serve 2 terms, they can be elected 2 times, and they can serve no more than 10 years. And make sure that you know that this one was made as a result of Franklin Roosevelt's presidency, FDR. Okay, sometimes we call it the FDR Amendment. And next, we want to look at the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment deals specifically with presidential succession, but also presidential incapacity and the vice president. Okay, so the 25th Amendment tells us 3 things. It says if something happens to the president, then the vice president takes over. It says if the vice presidency is vacant, we have to pick a new one. And it also says that if the president is unable to fulfill his responsibilities, his cabinet can vote to put the vice president in charge. And we'll talk more about that in class as well. We've also had some legislative changes, specifically dealing with the War Powers Act. So the War Powers Act was passed over President Nixon's veto. Okay, so Congress passed this law, Nixon vetoed it, and then Congress overrode the veto. So the War Powers Act is a law that was passed during Nixon's administration that says that the president can only send troops into war or into combat if he tells Congress within 48 hours. And it also tells us that if the president sends troops overseas, the president has to either withdraw them, bring them home within 60 days, or Congress has to declare war or approve the measure, okay? So the goal of the War Powers Act was to limit the war-making power of the president and kind of give that back a little bit to Congress. And the last thing we want to look at today is executive privilege. So we've talked about executive privilege throughout the course of the course, but executive privilege is this idea that there are certain things that the president doesn't have to share. That if the president has information about a national security issue or something like that, that information probably doesn't need to be shared. So over time, we've had questions pop up of, well, what is executive privilege? Where does executive privilege start? Where does it stop? What can the president withhold? All of those different things. But executive privilege is the president's authority to withhold certain information from Congress or from the press. And I'm going to stop there. If you guys have any questions, let me know.